Hello and welcome back to Seconds Out. My name is Ayman. It's once again my pleasure to be joined by the incomparable Hall of Fame boxing writer Thomas Hauser. Thomas, how's life?
Life is good. A little tired. I was up till 3 o'clock in the morning, after the Haney Garcia fight. By the time I slogged through everything, because the fight was over well after, didn't even start till after midnight here in New York. That would have been about 5 o'clock in the morning, your time.
Mm.
Went the distance. It was pretty wild afterwards. So I didn't get to sleep till after 3 o'clock. And at my age, I'm not used to doing that. In fact, at any age, I wasn't used to doing that.
I can imagine the recovery time was a little bit off there, but I'm glad to see you're in good spirits. I've heard also that you scooped another award to add to your list of accolades. What's the news with the latest award you've received?
I've, I've got two very nice honors coming in. One was the Boxing Writers Association of America uh, just announced that I would receive the award for Best Investigative Journalism of the Year for an article I wrote last year that focused on Eddie Hearn, Conor Ben, boxing, and illegal performance enhancing drugs. So that was very gratifying to me. And then also the officers and executive board chose me as the recipient of the A.J. Liebling Award, which I think has only been given out once in the past 7 years. And that's for outstanding boxing writing over a lifetime. So I'm very pleased with that. 20 years ago, I was honored with the Nat Fleischer Award for Career Excellence in Boxing Journalism. This is something different. A.J. Liebling set the standard to which boxing writers aspire. Larry Merchant, Randy Roberts, Bob Lipsyte, who previously won the award, have been friends of mine for decades, really. I guess I met them way back when I was researching Muhammad Ali's life and times. So to follow in their footsteps and the other Liebling Award winners is a very nice feeling. I'm very gratified by it.
And the writing doesn't end there on the boxing side, nor does it on also documenting your life as well with your mother. That's set to release soon. Yeah, just give us a bit more information about that memoir, I guess, or however you describe it as to what people can expect to read when they open up the book.
The book is called My Mother and Me, and I'm not very good at mastering the camera, but I can try to hold it up here. I don't know if that's on the air for you now or not. But it's called My Mother and Me. It's a memoir. As I think I said when we spoke before, I realized very early on that I couldn't write about my mother and our relationship without writing about me, hence the and me part of the title. And it's certainly the most personal writing I've done so far. And it's not just biographical, it's also about, and it's experience that most of us will share sooner or later in our lives about watching someone that we love grow old and then very old and then reach a point in their life when they feel they've lived long enough and it's time to die. My mother was 96. She lived a long, privileged life. And this book is really my last gift to her, if you will. And if anybody, reads it and wants to communicate with me about it, my email address is out there, certainly. It's Thomas Hauser Writer at gmail.com. And if anybody reads this book and wants to talk with me about it, shoot me an email. I'd love to exchange thoughts.
Looking forward to the release of the book, Thomas. I'll certainly be grabbing a copy. I want to segue onto a chapter in boxing. It seems like a very much a hallmark chapter, at least in this generation's boxing fights, and that being Haney versus Garcia this weekend. I'll let you take the floor with it first of all to just give me your. I know that you wrote an article on the ring as to your thoughts on it, but just here on this interview, what were your immediate thoughts about the fight and the implications of it as well?
Well, there are so many different components to this
Mm.
story. First, it was a great fight, very exciting fight. When I say a great fight, not a fight that was fought at the skill level of some of the historic matches that boxing scenes look back on. But it was a very dramatic, exciting fight. As you know, Ryan Garcia knocked Devin Haney down 3 times in 3 different rounds. The fight came on the heels of a very bizarre promotion. And I know people are saying now that, oh, Ryan was just trolling. Ryan was crazy like a fox. Ryan was faking. I don't think so. I think that Ryan Garcia, who I feel is basically a very decent young man with good instincts, has a lot of emotional difficulties. He acknowledges that he took 15 months off from boxing after fighting Luke Jackson because he had emotional difficulties. And a lot of that was on display in the lead into the fight. My biggest concern for Ryan is that I don't think he can control the trigger. You know, some people were analogizing this to Cassius Clay's histrionics at the weigh-in before he fought Sonny Liston. But Cassius Clay, later, of course, to become Muhammad Ali, could always control the trigger. I don't think Ryan can control the trigger. And of course, Ryan's conduct went much further over the edge than Cassius Clay's did when he fought Sonny Liston.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a difference between, you know, coming into a weigh-in with a walking stick and shouting, "Where's that big ugly bear? I'm going to whoop that ugly bear," which was considered outlandish at the time, and getting up at a press conference and talking about, you know, having sexual intercourse with your opponent's mother and a lot of the other really crazy, ugly things that were said and done leading up to the fight.
I've seen a small snippet of a quote from an interview that Ryan has recently done, and he's saying now that he's essentially pre-recorded this all, documented this all, and he set out a plan to fool people into thinking he was not mentally sound, I guess. And that kind of begged the conversation, or the uncomfortable conversation, or the uncomfortable reality that in this day and age where mental health has got the spotlight on it more so than it ever has, is it okay to characterize yourself in such a way where people are led to believe that you need help and support, and the last thing that you should do is being boxing in a high profile fight on the weekend? Is that an acceptable way to sell and promote a fight in this day and age? I wonder what you feel of those ramifications going forward.
Well, first, I don't think it's ever acceptable to feign mental illness. Quite frankly, as I've said, I don't think Ryan was feigning it. But mental illness is a serious matter. And if someone feigns mental illness, what they're really doing is distorting the dialogue and undermining the reality of people who do need help. You know, and if people look at Ryan and say, "Oh, well, he's feigning it," maybe they'll look at somebody else and say the same thing when that person needs help. It's not something to be taken lightly. I don't think one should go out and pretend they have mental illness any more than they should pretend they have cancer. They're both illnesses. They're just illnesses of a different kind. But again, I don't think Ryan was feigning. I think that there might be times when he was intentionally going over the top. But my sense is that there are some serious issues there. And look, I think Ryan Garcia has a lot of good in him. And one of the things I've talked about in the last week was when Canelo Alvarez fought Sergey Kovalev in Las Vegas. I was in Canelo's dressing room in the hours before and after the fight. Ryan at that time was being trained by Eddie Reynoso, who trains Canelo. So Ryan was in the dressing room. Ryan went out. He knocked out Romero Duno in the first round, came back to the dressing room, obviously was quite happy. Then Dwayne Ford, the WBC supervisor on site, because this was for some minor WBC title, came in and told Ryan that the belt he had wasn't really his belt. It was Duno's belt. the WBC would mail Ryan his belt in the next week or so. But this belt that Ryan took out of the ring with him had to go back to Duno. Dwayne said that either he could bring it back alone or Ryan could come with him and they could give the belt back together. So Ryan went back to Romero Duno's dressing room to give him back his belt. Then he came back to the dressing room he shared with Canelo, sat down next to me and said, "Boy, that was really hard. I felt bad because I went in there and Dunero was crying and crying. And look, I did what I had to do. I'm a fighter. I'm glad I did it, but I really felt bad for him." And the empathy was genuine. Wasn't faking it. It was genuine empathy for another person. That's part of the good in Ryan Garcia. And rather than try to exploit his condition today, I'd like to see more people express some empathy for him and do what they can to help him rather than enable him.
Going back to the actual action in the fight week, one of the main points of contention was the weight. And for some, in the aftermath of it all, they feel there's a asterisk to Ryan Garcia's win because he didn't make the championship weight, and he was allowed to, after agreed, to part with some of his earnings to weigh in at not the agreed weight. Do you feel an asterisk to his win at all? Is there credibility to that?
I don't know that boxing has asterisks the way that baseball had at one point next to home run records, but yeah, certainly Ryan benefited from the fact that he blew off the weight. He didn't dry himself out to make weight the way that Haney did. He appeared to be the much bigger man in the ring. That was an advantage. And look, yeah, part of the blame goes to Haney for not insisting on a rehydration clause. We understand that Ryan probably couldn't have come in at much less than 143, which was his bad to begin with. But okay, so he agreed to give $600,000 out of his purse to Haney, and the fight goes ahead. But the Haney camp was so, confident, arrogant, whatever word you want to put on it, that this wouldn't be much of a challenge for Devin, that they didn't insist on a rehydration clause. And that led Ryan to rehydrate and blow up as big as he wanted to. And that certainly worked to his advantage on fight nights. So does he have a belt? No. But let's face it, at this point for Ryan, the belts are largely irrelevant. The sanctioning bodies will be lining up to find belts that Ryan can fight for in order to get the sanctioning fees. Yeah, beat him. It was a great fight. He wasn't supposed to beat him, wasn't expected to beat him. The odds were about 8-1 going in on the fight. And if you were going to bet that Ryan would win by decision, you could have gotten somewhere between 15 and 20-1.
I want to focus on Haney for a second, and I want to ask you about the damage done to his career in this loss on two sides. First of all, when he's presented as a fighter who has the Mayweather sort of style to a degree and is maybe kind of looking to take the mantle from Mayweather, having the not got the O intact anymore, how much damage will that do to his career if he's looking to get those top riches like Mayweather had achieved in his career? And also, I've heard the word beating be bandied about as to the damage he took in the ring from Ryan Garcia. Did it go that far, do you feel, as a beating there in the ring, coupled with the weight that he had to make? How damaging do you think this is for Haney on those two fronts?
Well, first, I think there's too much emphasis put on the O on a fighter's record. Nobody looked at Sugar Ray Leonard and said he wasn't great because he lost to Roberto Duran. They give credit for fighting Roberto Duran and then coming back and beating him the second time. Going to Devin Haney, he's a very good fighter. I never felt that he should be at the top of the pound for pound conversation. If you look at Devin's record, he beat a smaller, older Vasyl Lomachenko in a very close fight, I might add. There were people who thought Lomachenko deserved the decision. What else? He beat George Kambosos twice, but I'm not sure how good Kambosos is if you look at his fight against what was the last fight he had? Or was it
Maxie Hughes.
okay, where he certainly didn't look good. To me, the most impressive win on Desmond's resume was when he fought Regis Prograis, thoroughly dominated him. I was very impressed by that. But to say that he should be in the pound for pound conversation because of that, no, I didn't think so. He's a very good, solid fighter. He can come back from this. I don't think coming back to fight Ryan Garcia right away would be the right move. Uh, I don't know how much of the punishment he took really stemmed off that first knockdown, or maybe even the earlier in the fight in the first round when he got staggered by a left hook. I don't know how much that discombobulated him for the fight, but he didn't take the sort of sustained beating that you see sometimes that can kill a fighter, that just the body punch after body punch or blow after blow after blow. He got knocked down by one punch at a time. It wasn't attrition. It wasn't a series of blows. I don't have the CompuBox stats in front of me, but he certainly didn't get hit with an enormous number of punches in that fight. So he's got to take his time to get back together physically, do all the head tests to make sure that's okay, recover psychologically, and then get back on the horse and ride again. He can certainly come back from this to get to where he was before in terms of his ability as a fighter. And in terms of a gate attraction, well, it depends on who he beats in the future.
Mm-hmm. Fixing back to Ryan Garcia quickly and his future, you talked about, certain organizations will be very much willing and wanting to find something for him. You also said about, him maybe not being able to control the trigger when it comes to him. And how big of a worry is that for you, for him, who is one of the, forgive the puns, but golden boys, and with as well Oscar, who's, promoting him, who has his own troubles as well too.
Look, it's a big worry. It's funny. I was watching the ring when the fighters were being introduced at the beginning, and Oscar and Bernard Hopkins were standing next to each other, and they sort of, like banged fists together. It was sort of like, thank God we got here. They're actually going to ring the bell for round one. This fight's actually going to happen. Now, having said that, if Jaime Munguia were to upset Canelo Alvarez on May 4th, Golden Boy would have two of the hottest fighters in boxing. So, this is boxing. Go figure. You don't know what's going to happen. But I would not recommend Ryan's training regimen for most fighters, because I don't think it would work for most fighters. And quite frankly, I don't think it'll work for Ryan as time goes by.
Moving forward, I want to get plug your thoughts on now the revealed 5 versus 5 Frank Warren's Queensberry versus Eddie Hearn's Matchroom Boxing, and the lead fight specifically on that undercard being Eddie Hearn and Deontay Wilder working together. When rewind a couple of years back, that wouldn't have seemed feasible considering the fallen negotiations they had in the past to make fights happen. Do you feel this might be a one and done here for Eddie and Wilder, or do you feel this is the start of something more fruitful?
Well, first, I don't care about Frank Warren against Eddie Hearn as a fight fan. That's not anything away from either of them as a promoter. But I'm not going to turn on the TV or the computer or whatever to see Frank Warren against Eddie Hearn. I'm more interested in watching, Wilder against Zhang, Dubois in his fight against Hrgovic. Of course, is that the card where the main event is Beterbiev and Bivol?
Correct. Yeah.
Fight. So to me, it's about the fighters. We already see too much of the promoters. Every time you look at a press conference or a weigh-in, the promoters standing there between the fighters. It's endemic. And as a fight fan, I'm more interested in the fights that are made. There are some good fights on that card. I'd like to see the Saudi Arabian General Entertainment Authority move away from pay-per-view and put more of these fights on free television. I think here in the United States, the Beterbiev Bivol fight will be on ESPN Plus, which is a modestly priced subscription service. So I gather the other fights will be on pay-per-view here.
Just a small bit of housekeeping. I wonder if you saw, I did watch an interview with Eddie, and he sort of reopened the door for a conversation between you and himself, but caveated as a, well, a small caveat, I should say properly, that you would have to apologize for the article you wrote regarding Anthony Joshua and him maybe taking the path to hang up his gloves. I did put that back to Hearn, and he said, did I say that? Maybe that was a bit of weakness from me. I'd rather not do that, but I'm not sure where it stands, where the door is open or not, but I wonder what you feel about that.
I'm happy to have a dialogue with Eddie Hearn at any time, but look, sometimes I write things that turn out to be right. Sometimes I write things that turn out to be wrong. I certainly always write from a position of good faith, and as you noted at the top of the telecast, I just was given the honor of Best Investigative Journalism of the Year by the Boxing Writers Association of America for an article I wrote last year that focused on Eddie Hearn, Conor Benn, and performance-enhancing drugs. So look, Eddie is a very hardworking, charismatic, intelligent man. He's at the front of the promotional pack now. You could have also said all those things about Don King in his prime. I'm happy to have a dialogue with Eddie anytime that he wants. And, we can talk about the many things that we agree on, and we can also talk about the things that we disagree on.
Thomas, I'll leave the final word with yourself. It's been a good chat to have with you once again. Is there any other topics of conversation that strikes to the top of your mind that you'd like to give a thought to as we close this out?
We have a continuing dialogue, and I look forward to continuing it. I might, go back again to My Mother and Me, the personal memoir I've just written. In addition to being about my mother, there are people like Muhammad Ali and Don King, Barbara Streisand, who filter through the whole story. There are some Ali anecdotes that are worth reading, and if anybody reads the book and would like to have a dialogue with me about it, I'd love to continue in that vein. And I look forward to speaking with you again soon.
Thomas, the pleasure is all mine. Thank you so much for speaking to Seconds Out, sir. Hopefully we'll catch up very, very soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Man.